A little while ago, the student animation film In a Heartbeat went viral. And whenever it happens that a film gets so much love and attention, we other animators and filmmakers should have a closer look, because we can learn a lot about how to give animation and a story so much heart. Pun intended. If you haven't seen the film yet, you can watch the entire thing if you click the I up there or the link in the description. And myself, I actually found the film on my Facebook wall when acting teacher Ed Hooks was writing about it. For all storytellers out there who are trying to figure out what kind of story to tell, I recommend that you pay close attention. The tribe wants to hear stories that are relevant to survival on Earth. Finding a mate is critically important. This comes with the realization that life is full of conflict, that one's heart is not always so easy to follow. I am not the least surprised that Beth and Esteban's little film has struck such a nerve. It is a story about the stuff of life. Pay attention, people. Stop trying to sell stuff to the tribe a la Disney. Help the tribe to survive. Animators are shamans. Ed Hooks uses a terminology that's, coming from way back when humans lived together in tribes, and there was a shaman, a person who explained them how the world works, about gods and whatever, trying to make sense of it all. Nowadays, we don't have that position as openly anymore, and you would probably not suspect it in entertainment. We can, even in more lighthearted entertainment, we can bring our own opinions and our worldview to the table and share it. And I think there's something very real and authentic about this when you do this that resonates with an audience. And I think that is indeed the reason why this film became so popular. So today let's start a little more general and look at the structure that a story usually have and see if we can find it in here. And spoiler alert, of course we can, because most stories ever told follow this structure. It's called The Hero's Journey, and we will use a more simplified version as described by Community and Rick and Morty creator Dan Harmon, which is: you need to go, search, find, take, return, and change as the stations of the hero's journey. Okay, so the first station, the U, is obviously the boy that who we see in the beginning, whose name, by the way, is Sherwin. You can read that on their Kickstarter page. There is a need that becomes apparent in the first few seconds because he has a crush on a boy named Jonathan. And then when his heart jumps out of the body, he is forced to go into something new that he didn't do before. We, as the person who observes the story, we know that the story is about the need of love and coming out. But from Sherwin's perspective, it's more about, oh my god, my heart just went out of my body and he's going towards Jonathan and he will find out, and I don't want that to happen. So from Sherwin's perspective, it's just that he wants to get the control back. He wants to get the heart back into his body. And he doesn't want Jonathan to find out that way. And this actually, really kicks off the story, because now something is happening that didn't happen before, that he would never dare to do, but has to do because of this heart doing what it wants. And then the search phase of the story actually is this back and forth battle of trying to catch it again. And then there is the deepest, lowest point in the story, where the two actually, during the fight they get closer and closer. The heart has grabbed both of them, and now it's out. Now the other people of the school saw. So, the world is upside down. Something very big changes. At the same time, Sherwin actually got grip of his heart again. So that's what he kind of wanted to get back. And that's the scene where, of course, the heart is ripping apart, which is the take part of the story, where the hero usually has to pay a huge price for this last battle, for what he wanted, and in this case, his heart breaks. The return in this case is going out of the school into the distance in front of the school again. But you know, he's heartbroken. He cannot make sense of it yet. And then in the last part, it's actually Jonathan who now reveals that he doesn't have a problem with Sherwin having the crush, and he's putting his heart back together. As you can see, this very classic structure also applies in this case. And if you write a story, you shouldn't use this as a blueprint right from the beginning. You should probably, you know, start to develop something natural. Just keep it common, just experiment. But if you realize that your story isn't flowing, your story isn't working, and you will at some point during the development process, there's no way around improving your story, then the structure is really helpful. And then asking yourself, you know, does my character really pay a price during the take phase? Is there really something at stake that causes the character to go to something that he didn't go before? So it's very helpful in fixing stories, and there is no way around this. Even the crazy, insane story of Rick and Morty followed these patterns. So the animation in this film is amazing. It's unbelievable that all this was done by students. The animation is great. The framing, the staging, the camera work, the lighting. It's crazy how just two people make a film that already is on that level of perfection. And deservedly so, both of them now work at big studios. So yeah, there's a lot we can learn from this clip. I find it interesting that the first thing you see is not Sherwin, it's actually the school, which is the building where later we have this darkest scene of the film. It shows the viewer that's where it's gonna go, and also the school building is kind of the problem. You know, the people in that building, the surrounding, and it's just standing there cemented and massive in the middle of the screen. Yeah, so actually that first bit of animation is, if I had to nitpick about anything, there are some things that I find a little choppy about it. I mean, it overall still works because the choppiness fits really well to Sherwin's nervousness, so it works here, and the animation in total works. But you know, if I had to nitpick something, I think what bothered me here is that if we track his hand during the turn, you have this phase where the hand is staying in place and then gets dragged over to the right again. This is something that can actually happen on accident, even if you animate correctly. Like maybe if you would look at this animation from the side, you wouldn't see the hand getting stuck there in the air. It's just, you know, perspective that makes it look that way. But, you know, those are things that you can sometimes avoid, that body parts get stuck in the air like this. But yeah, as I said, I'm nitpicking on very high standards, and the animation overall works, and the posing is super strong. Like this pose is amazing. If you look at the negative spaces that make it interesting, because there's just such diverse angles to it. How the arm is kept close to the body here, but here's going away, and you have more of a straight here, and then you have bend in knee here. It's just a very strong pose that really expresses his uncertainty and nervousness. And yeah, I love this anticipation here. So, and pay attention how he looks at the bushes first, and then he makes the decision, I'm gonna jump in here. He's not just jumping in there immediately. He has to see the bush first and be like, okay, I'm gonna jump in there. Then he's preparing for that physically, and he's doing this windmill move that he's going to do a couple of times during this film. This is like his signature nervous move. And you just have this gorgeous anticipation going all the way back to have the energy for the upcoming jump, which is just his whole body following this jump arc, which is pretty cool. If you have chances to stretch your character over an arc like this, you should definitely use it. It looks really interesting, looks very flowy. And this way you can also follow this quick action very well. So, and then what's interesting about the beginning, we right from the beginning see that those characters have different rhythms because they are in different situations. Sherwin is very nervous, obviously trying to hide, his heart's beating, and Jonathan, he moves a lot slower because he's at peace. So yeah, that's something you should keep in mind. Give two characters different rhythms depending on their situation, depending on how they feel, or maybe even how they deal with the situation. You know, maybe you have characters in a dangerous situation, but the one character is totally nervous about it, and the other character is like, I've done this thousands of times. And this is what makes animation interesting. If you have contrast, if you have, if you see how a character feels in their motions. So here's a nice little touch. When he wants to pull himself up on the tree, he grabs into empty space first, and only then at the second try he gets the tree. And this is great for two things. First of all, it helps to show that he's completely distracted looking at Jonathan. And also, it's something very human to do. You know, this can happen to a living being. You know, we can accidentally miss and correct ourselves. Especially if we're not looking, we're doing that all the time. You know, if I'm reaching to my water right now, I need to move my hand several times until I find my glass. So this is just a very human touch. And this is something that you can forget when you animate, because when you animate, you're in this completely artificial situation where you're like, okay, he has to grab the tree, and it's very straightforward to just do that, you know. But sometimes it's interesting to bring little things like this, little mistakes that living beings make into your animation like that. Now, this is really interesting. When Sherwin bumps his head into the tree, I think there's just the right amount of frames there for us to register his facial expression, his closed eyes. Let's see how many there are. Bang. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And those 10 frames, they don't feel like much, but it's important to really see the facial expression. And I think there's a rule like anything under 4 frames doesn't get registered at all as a step in your animation. Like if you ask people, can you remember how he had his eyes closed? If that would be under 4 frames, people could not say that. People would not keep that in mind. So yeah, here they went for 10 frames, so you can really see it, but it still doesn't feel like an eternity or something. Now again, this animation is very rhythm driven, actually by the heartbeat. You can also see how that is in his hand motions. What I love about this moment, this is pose 1 and this is pose 2, and they're not that far away from each other. You know, if you would just animate that going from here to here, that wouldn't be much of a difference. You know, that wouldn't feel like a big change. So what they did is they put this pose in between where he goes completely crazy, and then he goes back to a pose that looks a little bit like the old pose. But because he did this big motion in between, it feels completely different and completely chaotic, which I think is really cool. Okay, so now there's the scene where the heart is actually coming out. What I think what can help to animate a scene like this is to imagine a little dialogue going on between the characters, even if it is a silent scene. What the? Yay, I'm free! Oh no, whoa, what's going on here? Let's go to him, right? Sherwin doesn't really know how to react. Nope, no, I'm not doing it. Yes, no, yes, no, yes. And it's a nice little touch that you can also see Sherwin shaking his head and then going back and forth. And then now there's an extra strong pull from Sherwin, which sets off this chain reaction. So I guess the takeaway here is that, you know, if you get in a back and forth rhythm, it has to lead to something bigger, to some finale of this action. Before we cut back to Sherwin, we actually see him coming out there while the heart is up in the air. And this is on purpose, because we humans, we like to follow motion. So now that the heart, throwing up and down motion is gone, we have a chance to see that something's going on over there. And that makes the cut a little smoother. And I really like how much hectic stuff is going on there. See how we always kind of have the head as an anchor? Like there's some frames where we see the like 2 or 3 frames where we can see the position of the head, where we have something to anchor our view. And I really like how the hand is sliding off the branch. And then he folds even in the background. Again, it's motion tying together. And there's no throwing up and down here, so we can really see the motion here. And this is actually also preparing that Jonathan will now bite into the apple. It's just really cool how well this is all tied together. This is pretty cool. He just jumped the entire distance. He fell down over here and now immediately is here. Which is something very cartoonish to do, but you know, it intensifies the situation a lot, so it's really appropriate here. It works really well. It contributes to the chaos. Also, beautiful smear frame here. This is actually the animator using face controllers to make the face that long. You know, this is not just motion blur. So in motions, you can go that extreme. I actually heard from an animator who worked on Tangled that in that production, while the characters were moving, they could do all kinds of weird stretches and things. And as soon as they were still, the model was rock solid again. So really, in motion, you can hide a lot of stuff. It's really cool. And you don't see it, like you can't remember it. You can't say, oh yeah, there was a cool smear frame in there, but you feel it. You know, by now I have enough experience to feel like, oh, there was probably a smear frame in there. That's why that works so well. And again, Sherwin is doing all sorts of things with his hands before they come to a stop, with this, which is like a signature move. But then again, you know, very readable, very clear pose when he comes to a stop, giving us enough time to see the next step. Which, by the way, I need to take a moment to point out the amazing hand poses all over the film. Like, if you have some time, you should really look at this frame by frame at the hands, because there's always so much cool stuff going on, like different angles, and you know, these fingers are at a different level than this one. Like they're always very interesting. And you know, here that those 2 fingers are grouped together and then those 2 are here, this is not coincidence. This is very, very good design. Yeah, very, very great animation here too. Like Sherwin going back and forth. Like you can see that, you know, inside of him there's something going on. He's like, can I dare to do this? And this is just how we would move. You know, we have these little intention cues in our emotions. And of course the facial expression all intensifies that. And the heart, of course, is completely... I like how those 3 characters are like in their own worlds. Like Jonathan is just reading his book. The heart is just like, oh, I'm next to Jonathan. And Sherwin is just like, oh my god, what if I need to get him out of there before he sees my heart? It's really cool. Yeah, and then here there's a nice step how the stuff intensifies, because Jonathan's about to bite into the heart, which makes Sherwin react to that. Oh no, I have to react immediately. And the heart just falls down there, which it doesn't really make sense how it got there, but oh well. It works for the film. And now this is very interesting. Whenever two characters touch, animation can get insanely complicated, because you know, if you have one character wearing clothing, or you know, wearing anything that warrants secondary animation, it's relatively easy because everything is following the character. You know, if I'm wearing a cape and I turn, then the cape has to follow my motion. But if two characters touch, then they change who is leading and who is following constantly, and that can make things very interesting. And in this case, they actually, after he grabbed the hand, they have to settle both. Like, first, Jonathan is pulled more towards Sherwin. Then Sherwin caught himself and is now moving in the other direction, so he is not pulling anymore. And then Jonathan is settling and actually lifting the hand a little. So yeah, that's why if you want to animate fast, you should avoid characters touching at all costs, because that can make things very complicated. And then again, brilliant step-by-step process again. Like, they just catch themselves physically, looking at the hand, what's going on, looking at each other. You know, this is a process happening step by step. And Sherwin, of course, pulls away immediately and is shy about it. And Jonathan doesn't really know what to think. And this is actually, I don't know if it's a weakness of the film, because I think they played it out very well. It works. Jonathan's reaction is always kind of neutral. Like, you cannot really tell what Jonathan thinks about Sherwin, and that is done on purpose because, you know, it's the reveal of the film at the end. It works because they always immediately go to the next step. Something happens that keeps Jonathan from making a face that reveals what he thinks. If he's just completely weirded out or if he's okay with it, we don't know until the very end. And here it's Sherwin actually reacting to the heart immediately before Jonathan can do anything else. And the chase continues. Look how we always get the face to have a little anchor. Like, now it's staying in that area of the screen. So we can see something and we don't just see constant motion. This is actually cut pretty interesting because we only see details, which we need in order to build up the pose. We need to see that he's trying to grab the heart, he's kind of going around him somewhere, and then he got him, and then there's the reveal, which makes it pretty strong. Again, brilliant posing. You have a lot of different angles to make this work, and then most importantly, their bodies kind of like melt together here in this part of the screen. So Sherwin got really close, which is kind of what he wanted, but not that way, and yeah. And it's super embarrassing. Let's have a look at how he gets into the trash can. I mean, again, step-by-step process. These things are important. He sees they are in this pose. He can't really react to it now. Then someone else comes. see that even here there is an anticipation. It's pretty interesting that Jonathan doesn't move at all. He's just frozen. And then when Sherwin's weight is off him, he moves again. And again, step by step, he sees the trash can as a way out. Also, this is serving as the anticipation. And it's just one arc again, which is pretty cool. And then the legs to just see the character going in. And again, Sherwin is always moving in all directions. Yeah, this is interesting how this is an angle first, and then the last frame before he goes into it, it's actually straight again. I bet that, you know, the animator experimented a lot with this, and that just looked best. Settle of the trash can, really nice. Oh yeah, and also, in case you didn't notice, the heart framing. You know, subtle communication. Now, this is again one of these situations where I think that, you know, they keep him kind of neutral, and then they have the school bell to guide the situation away from a resolution, because it's not resolution time yet. That comes at the end. And you can also see an acting principle at work here, namely that a character is following an objective until that objective gets replaced. So in this case, just somebody walking past Jonathan was not enough to replace his objective of finding out what the hell is going on here. But then the school bell is enough to pull him back to the school and change his objective. I think it's also interesting to see how the heart has a different style than the other characters and the surrounding in the film. Like it really reminds me of like this Cloudy with a Chance of Meatball kind of style. And maybe it helps to underline, it should underline that this is just in Sherwin's head, that the you know, it's actually an inside battle visualized to the outside. You shouldn't switch styles just because, only if it strengthens a point or a feeling that you want to create. And I think, like, I cannot quite pinpoint it down, but it fits here. Now then, what I find really interesting is how we change the way of motion here. Before, everything was very cartoony and Looney Toony, and how do you top that? How do you top this wonderful, hectic, chaotic motion? Towards the finale of your film, you need to do something more. You need to do something different. And I think this floating, almost magnetic force-like emotion does exactly that. It's something fresh, but also now we are moving with the heart. Like, the heart was, you know, it was floating the entire time. Before we were doing all motions with Sherwin, and now we're doing the floaty way of motion with the heart. Again, as a secondary animation, Sherwin is shaking his head. And yeah, now you can really feel some force behind that. And then I also think this is a really nice touch, because it takes the whole situation from being like, it could be to be between any two people who are in love or have a crush, but we actually learn in this scene that Sherwin probably likes Jonathan's hair, and we get this information through this, which I think is pretty clever, and like one of these human touches that a good film needs. Okay, so and now this is like the worst thing for him. Like, the heart is gone, he lost complete control, and now it's even inside the school building where everybody can see that. So now it's really going down. And oh, it's bad. as you can see, you know, it's going back and forth again. And I think the amount of steps like is really well calculated. Like, the heart is doing what it wants, then it realized that Sherwin is coming, going out of his way, again, and now he got, Sherwin got the heart. Heart pulls back, heart grabs Jonathan, and then they're on this constellation. Like, this is just the right amount of steps. And that is something that I probably tried out with storyboards and animatics until it was just right. And it's also interesting that the scene is slowing down here. Like, while this is action, this is intense now. The stuff where not, the parts where not much motion is happening is actually more intense than the action and more meaningful and important. And see how, if a character is thinking, most of that is happening in the face through the direction that the head is turning, and very, very importantly through the eyes. And you can see how this is done here too. And also there's no revealing reaction from Jonathan yet. But for Sherwin, of course, this is too much. And I think like the facial expression, like really strong, really, really powerful, and big anticipation and settle under like still under pressure so that this scene can follow. And now this is really brilliant, how the ripping of the heart is cut against the opening of the door. So you have the rip kind of 2 times. Still no clear reaction from him, but he's thinking about it. Again, lots of eye darts, and as a conclusion, the looking up, but then it's too late at the moment, the doors close. And we returned with Sherwin into the safe distance. Very blue colors now. And again, sadness has not a lot of motion. Okay, so the thing about touch is that I think there are studies, even if we just watch somebody touching something, like our synapses that usually react to us touching something also react a little bit. So if you carefully and appropriately animate a touch, then this can help to make your animation even deeper experience, because it has this haptic, this realness, this real note to it. And it's also very difficult to animate. Like in 3D, you always have to watch that you're not actually going through surfaces. So it can be a pain to animate these scenes, but they can really take your animation to the next level. And this is something that is also done here. I also like how his face, like how you can feel the tension. That is not easy to do. Very well done. And it's very slow. If you remember how Sherwin moved in the beginning, like this is completely different now. He's broken. He's changed. And now Sherwin is back to the hectic motions. Again, see how there are steps to this, you know? He noticed that he's seen. He doesn't know what to do. He confirms it. Looks back. What do I do? And he tries to hide that he cried, which is amazing. Like this is like a detail it's easy to miss. And And then, oh my god, he's so close, he's here. I don't have a chance to get away. And that's actually the freeze response. A very instinctive response is to just freeze and wait for the situation to solve or go away. And this is also just the right steps. Going back first. Also see how before the cut, Jonathan's finger twitched again. Like he's pulling back. He moved again, going back a little. Like, this is communication. This is not communication through words. This is communication through hands going back and forth. Isn't this amazing? And then he lets him again touch. Really meaningful, really powerful. And the heart is immediately back to a full heart mode. Also, really interesting, eye blinks. There are such things as half eye blinks. Like sometimes we don't close our eyes all the way. That can just happen randomly, that we don't do a full blink, we only do a half blink. But also, if we very intensively try to see something, our eyelids will still twitch when they would usually blink. And this is what's happening here with the heart. Like he has his eyes wide open, but there's still, you can see the eyelids twitching a little. And then of course, you know, the communication with the eyes, looking back and forth and look at each other. And during this entire scene, the sun was coming out again. Like here it was very blue and dark. And then as the scene progresses, like you can even see there's a little spot of sunlight on Jonathan. And here is even more sunlight. But it gets really visible in the next shot. You can see the sunlight coming in. Really clever touch. Yeah, beautiful film. So I'm sure there's more clever, wonderful stuff in here, but I left it in for you to find. I can only encourage you, do the same thing, load something into your video editing software or into syncsketch.com, which I was using, where you can scrub through stuff frame by frame, annotate it. You can even do that in sync with others, which is pretty cool. Take inspiration from life and other films, because those little touches, those little influences of reality are what will make your animation great. If you're wondering about the stuff behind me, we just moved, and no, this is not the permanent set of the new Animator Island. But yeah, I hope to have that up in a couple of weeks. And thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Good luck with your animation. Take care and goodbye.